Hello, welcome to Who Taught You? And Who Taught You is a platform where we talk about a plethora of things. Today we're going to be talking about who taught you about real estate. Before I get into it, I want you to like, subscribe, and share. Just hit the buttons below. So I have Samantha Corlett. She's a friend of mine, and she's also a realtor and a real estate appraiser. And you also have a YouTube page, right?
I do. It is Signature RES.
Okay. And she teaches you all about real estate there. So, Samantha, I just want to ask you, so who taught you about real estate?
I'm going to tell you who taught me, but first I have to thank you for the opportunity of being on your platform.
Oh, girl, you know it ain't nothing
tons
but a
of
thing.
people, but you still chose me, so I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you coming here to share all the knowledge with the
Thank
good
you.
folks, right, good folks?
But who taught me about real estate? My first influence was actually my father.
Oh, okay.
My father had his broker's license, and he's a complete educator. He loves to learn knowledge about different things, and he fascinated me going with him or just viewing different types of homes. So that's who taught me. Then, of course, you have to get your formal education after that.
So, did you go with him as a kid or as a young adult or an adult?
I think all through my life, I loved real estate through different influences of homes, whether going to my aunt's home, meaning brownstones in New York City, which is not very popular down here, but that's a great form of architecture, or going to my aunt's house in DC, which they have a lot of historical homes there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another form of architecture and homes. So I've always had an interest, but he's the one that kind of cultivated that in walking around with him.
Okay.
So it's a gradual process through the years.
Okay. So I've known Samantha a long time, and she's always been an entrepreneur and in real estate. And I'm very proud of her because she's been able to sustain when other entrepreneurs in real estate haven't been able to, right? Let me just ask you, how has real estate changed pre-pandemic versus now?
You know, it is very funny that you asked that question. It has double impact. For instance, pre-pandemic, the houses, we've been experiencing a house shortage for a while.
Yes,
so
and Georgia too.
Yeah, everywhere. So then after there being a house shortage, then we get hit with the pandemic. But previous to that, houses might have sold every 40 days. That's called days on market. So that was the average time of market. In a great market, a typical market, they would like for it to be 60 to 90 days. But because of the lack of inventory, it was at 40 days. So that's pre-pandemic, right? After the pandemic, everything had to shut down. Realtors couldn't show houses, appraisers couldn't go in, inspectors, as your husband, couldn't do our jobs because we were not allowed to enter into the home. That affected our market for at least 2 months, right? The government had to come up with rules about how can we keep them safe and still keep the market going. Now, post-pandemic, there's such a shortage of homes that a house days on market now is like 5 to 30 days, which seems very unreal, and say a home is 100,000. I'm just giving a round number. By the time they're done bidding, there are like 20 bids on one house, and it might go up a whole $40,000. So that is part of the effect of the pandemic. But there's another effect of the pandemic that we haven't seen yet, but we're about to see, is all of the homes that were put on hold. The landlords couldn't get rid of their tenants, people couldn't pay their rent or their mortgages. There's going to be a release of those homes, and what happens when it gets released is people will get foreclosed on, landlords will be allowed to kick out their tenants, and there will be an influx of properties on the market. But there are two things that affect that. One is the additional properties that will be added to the market, and the second is the people that lost their jobs due to the pandemic. So even if they wanted their homes, now they have no jobs, so they can't keep their homes. So we haven't seen the end of it, but that's a whole nother side, and that also affects our market.
Now I would definitely like to find me a house for $100,000, like you said, because these houses now are like $500,000 plus, right? And I know that you travel quite a bit sometimes for work because you're a home appraiser, right?
Yeah.
So you, where are you licensed to do home appraisal?
In Georgia and Florida, I have both real estate and appraisal license in both states. I could have more, however, for each state I have to pay for them. So I try to limit my scope of work because those are fees due every year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's going to be a really sad situation for these people who do not have an income or do not want to go back to work for the little bit of income that they are trying to give, these employers are trying to give. And I just feel like, oh, the rich are going to continue to win because they're going to have the money to buy all of these properties and then sell them again or, make some type of income from it.
Unfortunately, I will have to agree with you. It sometimes becomes a vicious cycle because for the ones that were laid off during this period, they're just figuring out how to eat.
Yes.
How to, save their money and have enough for their children. So for those people, they had to use their credit cards during this time. So they are heavily in debt. So even if they wanted to captivate on one of those houses, they couldn't. And their credit wouldn't sustain because those rules don't change just because of a pandemic. And that is something that people have to actually think about that they don't think about. They're like, well, let me just swipe this card, we'll all be forgiven. But everything isn't forgiven, and everything forgiven, there's a price to it. So my statement to the public is, I know you are very happy about these stimulus checks, but nothing is given to you for free.
Yay, stimulus
There will be a repercussion of maybe not every dollar, but it will impact you in some way. Everything you do has to be claimed on your taxes. And even for the people that were given the option of not paying on their mortgages.
Yes.
Yeah, it worked out fine initially, but what some people don't know is if you don't read the print on it, they can extend those non-payments for you, but they have also, depending on the lending company, added a lien onto your mortgage.
Wow.
Did you know that?
That's crazy.
That's crazy, but people sign things without reading.
I think because you're desperate and you're in that situation, so you're like, okay, I just don't want to lose my home. You know what I'm saying? You know what's so funny? I spoke to a few people about NACA, and NACA, which is a program out there, they're helping people to save their home. So if you're not aware of that, go check them out.
That's right. They've been around for a while too.
Yes,
so yeah, this is what
definitely. So what are some tips that you can tell buyers and sellers? Because you see the homes and you get to appraise them. And recently I did a refinance last year, and they, because it was a refinance, I didn't really push back that much on what they were appraising my home. Okay. But I knew probably my home was probably worth maybe 10 or 20,000 more. But because it was a refinance, really didn't care.
Did you need, because some refinances you are not required to have an appraiser. Did you need to have one?
Yes,
for yours?
I did.
Okay, I understand that. But, I think what might have affected your home, I don't know the details of it, is also the new construction around the corner. So that has a positive and a negative impact on your home, because if they're selling for, say, $5,000 more, they're not going to value your older home as the same amount. However, the advantage of your older home is you have larger land.
Yes,
You
I
have a
definitely
larger
do.
home. You have better fixtures. These are things that a person may or may not give as much credit as they should to.
I mean, I didn't trip about it. Plus, after speaking to you, I kind of knew the game.
Yeah.
They have to look within how many miles you said.
A mile.
Yeah.
A mile's
And
range. Unless it's, special circumstance, like if you're on a large, like over acre lot, we're allowed to go further out. Things of that nature.
so, what are some tips for buyers and sellers as far as even also appraisal? Because you sell real estate as well. But
Correct.
even as appraisal, can they push back? Say the bank says, oh, this house is worth this. I mean, in this market, I feel like you have to kind of take what you take. You know what I'm saying? If you really are desperate to get a home. But can't you push back and say, no, my house is worth more because of this?
Well, yeah, that's another great topic. Let's start with the buyer.
Mhm.
Okay, for a buyer, I would really recommend that you get approved first, not pre-approved, because pre-approved is just a general letter they can give you based on whatever you've stated. However, a full approval is based after they've done the review of all documents, assets, child support, all of those things. And that's where you know where your buying power truly lies, And then in addition to that, because there's been so much real estate fraud lately, when you do sign a contract, I would tell you to look up the public records to see if the seller that you signed for is actually the name of the owner or if it's a different name. Because, plenty people, especially people moving to Atlanta, movies, whatever, it's their dream to live in Atlanta. They sign contracts and leases and come to find out that's not even the true owner of the place.
Wow. Wow.
So you're basically entrusting people with your deposits and earnest money that might not even own the home. So research is key for the buyer. Now for the seller, I know this is not typical, but a true savvy seller, you don't necessarily pick the highest price that comes into you. You pick the one that's most realistic because it's such a seller's market and the values are going sometimes even 40,000 more than what's asked for. Anyone can say 40,000, but do they really have the 40,000?
Yes.
Do they have they're just saying it out of desperation to get the home, and they're like, early buyer or a fresh buyer, as I call it, would think, okay, well, I'll get the lender to pay the extra 40, but it doesn't work like that. The home is only worth what is appraised for or what you agree upon in the contract, whichever one is the lowest.
Oh.
So say it's appraised for 200,000, but you bid 240. That extra 40 has to come from you. And then you resend it. So say the seller accepts your offer because they're like, oh my gosh, it's 40,000 more. And they accept it. And then you come to the end and you think the lender's going to pay. And they're like, we're not paying that. We didn't agree to that. We agreed to the appraisal or the sales price, whichever one is lower. Then the buyer has to say, oh my gosh, I don't have the money. I'm sorry. So now you've taken the property off of the market for 60 days.
Oh, wow.
For something that wasn't realistic. That's time lost. And as I say, time is money. So you do not want to do that. So it's not necessarily the highest one, it's the one that has the money. So
show me the money.
Show me the money. So as soon as you accept the contract as a seller, I would suggest you contacting the bank or whichever financial institution and trust to make sure that money is actually there. And if it isn't there, sitting there, not that they can get 40, that's actually there 40. If it isn't there, on to the next offer. because that's wasting time.
Yes,
You know?
and then taking your property off the market, like you said. Now, what about? I hear sometimes like, um, say I want to get a brand new construction and I've signed it, and then I heard that the builders are because lumber and stuff materials were so expensive, but I think lumber has gone down now. That they were like, say I'm closing in 9 months, and closer to the 9 months, they have a loophole in there that they're increasing the price.
Well, unfortunately, that has happened a lot this year, especially with individual builders and also new construction development. I thought it was an unfair rule. However, I do get it. The price of lumber goes up every single day, kind of like the stock market.
Oh.
Every day. So until you purchase that lumber, and the lumber is only purchased at a certain phase of the development. It's not purchased the day you start. You understand? So if they're selling it to you for this price and lumber has tripled, because I heard it has almost like quadrupled. So, and if it has tripled, they're just saying they don't want to assess all of that loss for having to pay so much more for the lumber.
Yeah.
Now, what I think would be the good thing to do is I think everyone should have to eat it, not just the buyer.
Yes.
It should be the buyer, the seller, the realtors. If everyone took a little bit off of what they're supposed to receive, you can get it done at a reasonable price, you know, versus just sticking all of this onto the buyer. Well, this is your cost now. That's not what you agreed upon. So I know you, especially Paula, you don't find a tooth and nail, but they can't help that the cost of lumber changed.
Yes,
you know,
I understand.
But they can help how that fee is distributed and how many people should have to take a cut. I know the realtors are not gonna like this, but if everyone took a little bit of a cut, everyone is still winning. The key is to win.
Yes.
Because that difference may make the difference of whether someone can buy the home or not.
That's true. And then you close, right? So I get it. I get it. So me and you are always politicking and talking about, what our future will look like with real estate. And we're always talking about purchasing land. And you are more diligent because you're in real estate than I am, because I have a projected date, because I'm like, I keep sitting down and I think 40 acres, because that's what they gave the American, 40 acres and a mule. Right. And I keep saying, if we all had so much land, even if we just had 40 acres, man, can all your family could live on all the 40 acres. I just keep thinking that. So I said, eventually I would like to buy some land. So we talk about it every now and again. And what are some things, because I'm still a little bit naive about buying land, because you told me about a story like, this land looked so good, but then it was swampy.
Correct. That's the key to what you're saying. You have to know what you're buying. So like someone may say, well, man, I got a deal on 10 acres of land, right? But if 7 of the 10 is a swamp, what kind of deal is that? Or if some of it, they have natural habitat land that you can't even touch.
Yeah.
So if it's some of that land, it doesn't help you. And what also doesn't help you, because Georgia has a lot of rocks.
Oh, yes.
And stones. So therefore, if you can't buy the land and it has rocks all underneath it,
yes,
they can dig it, but of course it would cost a lot more money to dig it, and you may have problems running wires and underground utilities for it because of that land. So the key is to know what type and quality of land that you're getting, what's usable, what's not usable, because a home can be in a floodplain. Automatically, if a home has a lake on it, which I wouldn't mind myself, right?
Me neither.
It's going to automatically be in a floodplain. But being in a floodplain doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It means you have to have insurance. So there is some floodplain land that's good, and there's some floodplain land that you can't build on because it gets flooded every single time it rains.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you have to know the difference in the quality of the land, what's buildable and what's not.
And you gave me some advice. You said that, in the future, if we wanted to buy land, me and my spouse, that maybe he buys the land and you build the house, or
Correct.
that you could take the land and use it as equity, I think you said?
I said, yes, you can, not necessarily equity, but say, when you go to purchase a home, because you have a home, you have to put a down payment in order for them to start. Your land is your down payment. So it is a form of equity. Depending on the lender, you may not have to put any money down because your land is your down payment. If you don't continue with the building, they take your land. It's just very simple. So it's just insurance that you continue on with the process. And if you spent the money on the land, you're gonna do your best
Not
to
lose
not let
it.
somebody take your land.
Not my 40 acres.
Good luck with that. I just need.
I don't need 40
too.
acres. I just need about 5.
I'm
That's
like,
all.
who is mowing these 40 acres?
But first of all, this is one thing I also learned. There was a house that I saw close to me. It was some distance away, a couple of miles from me, and it looked like one of the most modern houses, like the houses in California or the ones they have in Atlanta with all this glass that people could see you walking around in your underwear. So,
I like that, but go ahead.
not me. I be thinking about scary movies that they
Okay.
looking at you while you looking at them in the dark. So I stopped and I asked the lady, and she said she bought 5 acres, but she told me that you only should clear out what you're going to use to build your home, and you pay for all those surveyors and all these other fees that you have to pay. And once you build your house, you don't have to pay all these fees again to clear the rest of the land.
Correct.
And I thought that was so smart. I was
That
like,
was
what?
really nice. Yeah. So you won't be charged at a higher rate. You will only be charged for the area in which you've chosen to build. Another tip about land that I've noticed within the last couple of months doing land work is that frontage. Like, frontage is the front of your home from left to right side, how much land there is, right? So for instance, this family inherited or bought this land, right? 10 acres of land. However, their frontage is 42 feet. 42 feet is not, it only covers the front of a house. If you measure from one end to another, including the garage, just go from left to right. So 42 feet, that's not a wide frontage, So what can you really do with that type of frontage? Now there's another home, it was 5 acres, but their frontage at the front of the road was 500 feet.
Oh, okay.
So what that tells you is you can not only build a home, you can have stuff to the left of it, you can have stuff to the right of it, and that is so that home with the larger frontage is more valuable than the larger lot that has a smaller frontage. It's just little things like that that people don't know, but you need to pay attention to when you get your land.
Now, I'll be asking most people this question who comes on the show, and I wanted to know, did you use the tool of manifestation to get to where you are now in real estate?
I would say I have used manifestation. However, I will also say that you also have to put work behind the manifestation, because a wish without an action means nothing. You understand? So, but then I also realize on the journey of real estate, you may think you want one particular thing that you're manifesting, but whoever you believe in, God, the eternal, the real estate developer, whoever you serve, may have a different plan for you.
Yes.
So where I am isn't necessarily where I thought I started and where I thought I was going to go projection in line. However, I noticed one door opens another.
Okay.
So I definitely believe in manifestation, but you also have to be willing to change with the curve. because obviously real estate has taken a different direction, especially since the pandemic.
Yes.
Everything is virtual now. People
Yes.
would never agree or even be willing to do something like that before.
No.
So we have to be willing to go where the market is going. Now you might get your best deals virtually.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be more diligent about your resources and your research behind that.
And I'm just gonna add a last thing. My cousin told me today that, like, for me, my home, a lot of people reach out to me. A lot of homeowners might get emails, postcards, telephone calls asking you to sell your home. I know somebody who, my cousin was telling me, somebody that she knew that she was going to use a realtor, but she didn't. She was getting her house together, and Offerpad sent her an offer, and they wanted her to film throughout the house. And initially, I guess they were giving her so much thousand over, but once she filmed through the house and showed them, they added something extra. So I don't know if they were trying to bump out the realtors, but I was like, they probably have realtors working for them, so I don't believe that they're trying to necessarily knock them out.
They do, but the one thing you have to remember, that's a great resource if you just want to get rid of a house, you're going to pre-foreclosure, or you're going through a divorce, or you just want to move and you need to move quickly. I would say those are great. Or you don't want to clean it up, or you don't have the resources to fix it up. You know, you use that. But for a person that knows that they've put good things in their home, like yourself, myself, for a person that they know that they have a decent amount of equity in their home, you do not want to necessarily let that be one of your first resources, because please believe, if they offered you that, they know they can get at least $20,000 more for it.
Exactly.
And I do sometimes do work for them, and they do a decent job, but they don't do anything overwhelmingly special. No disrespect to Offerpad, but they may just do a paint and carpet change.
Okay.
And add a good $10,000 or $20,000 to it. So when an appraiser comes in, yes, they've done something, but it wasn't anything that magnificent that a person who had, say, $5,000 could have done themselves.
Okay.
You know, so it's all about how much work do you want to put into it. Is it worth getting rid of it, or do you want to just spend a little more time, if you have the time, and get that additional money? Please know they may give you a good offer, but it's nothing compared to what they're going to return back onto it. It's still a business.
Yes.
You know.
So I will have a link for Samantha down at the bottom. And again, like, subscribe, and share. And now we have to go. So bye.
Bye.